so much for coming today. This is a really exciting opportunity to get a look behind the curtain on what really goes on the Hill. We see a lot of things in the media. There's a lot of information being shared right now. And so making the most of our visits is something that is going to be really, really important for Fly-In. So you think you can talk to a senator? Let's find out. Um, I'm going to go over a few topics as we go over this. This is going to be a quick, 15-minute overview on what you should be doing when you have these visits, followed by a really interesting conversation that hopefully will touch on pieces of this. So first topic is priming them. Second is identifying 2 to 3 issues to discuss. Third is compelling them. And then finally, with any good relationship, a give and take is very important. Always ask them what they need. So just going to paint a picture for you all, as I'm sure many of you are aware when you have done visits already on the Hill. There are a lot of different issues that are happening all of the time. I mean, the news media just captures a sliver of all of the different things that staff and senators and representatives have to deal with on a daily basis. So this goes directly into, they're human. They are people, even though they're holding these jobs. They have low pay. They work long hours. They do not even have enough time to eat. I know I've been in many meetings where staffers have apologized for eating a granola bar during a meeting because they needed to eat that day. And they have a meeting literally every 30 minutes on top of all of their deliverables. So keep that in mind. The second piece is they have extensive portfolios. So those that cover water will also likely cover energy or agriculture. You'll even find sometimes they cover taxes. They have a lot of different issues that they're dealing with. And water is not the sole thing most of the time that they are dealing with, unless, of course, you're talking to committee staff. And then finally, they are a public servant. They're there because they want to be and they want to help you. They are not there for the pay. I can tell you that. They are definitely there because they recognize the importance of Congress, and they also want to, give back to their communities, their constituents, and be able to serve in that role to be a voice for the community that their member represents. So first, you have to prime them. So priming is everything. We all say, don't go into a meeting unprepared. And really what going in unprepared is the opposite of all of this. So your meeting starts before you even get there, before you even, sit down in that room. Your meeting has already started. You need to schedule your meeting ahead of time. The earlier, the better. If you're asking for a member of Congress or a senator to be there in that meeting, then you really want to make sure you're doing it even more ahead of time because they have busy schedules. But I will say that if you are a constituent directly, there is more chance that you will get that meeting with the direct member. If not, you'll meet with their staff, and their staff are, probably in some cases more knowledgeable than the actual members. And so you really want to be cognizant of their time. Show up 10 minutes early. Do not show up 10 minutes late. Don't show up 5 minutes late. If you have a 30-minute meeting and you show up 10 minutes late, you only have 20 minutes left of your meeting. These people run on a time schedule, and if you're not respectful of that, that can be really challenging for them. Introduce yourself. Don't just go in and start talking about these issues. They don't even know who you are, right? They can't tell you from the other person that they spoke to 20 minutes ago. So really bring in that introduction and do so using a personal story. So what I used to do was, hi, I'm Bibi. I work at the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies. Now I work at EMA. I am representative of 100,000 utilities in this country that serve over 100,000 people. And our footprint is, covering nearly 50% of all water providers. And so that is of your constituents ultimately. So you really want to provide them that personal story. The more personal you can get, the better. That doesn't mean, tell them your kids' names or anything, but leave them something that they will remember you with. It helps that I have a unique name. So that always helps me with my introductions. And then finally, don't use acronyms. Don't say, I work for AMWA, for example, right? That's what I used to say. You want to say the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies. You really want to make sure that you can spell out everything that you could be saying. They hear a million acronyms a day, and especially the water sector has a million different acronyms. Do not expect them to know all of those acronyms. They likely do not. And then do not talk about politics or elections. That really brings in a lot of the turmoil that's happening right now in DC. Really steer clear of that. Stick to substance. They are not able to talk about these things, and you don't want to make them uncomfortable. And also don't be dismissive of questions asked. If someone asks you a follow-up, don't say, yeah, I don't know. Say, I'm happy to get back to you on that. I don't have an answer right now. So next, you want to identify 2 to 3 issues to discuss. Any more than 3, they are no longer listening. So I can tell you from meetings that I have had, I have been in meetings where people have mentioned, 5 different things, and you see the staff are like furiously writing in their notebook all of these different areas, but they don't know what's important to them. And especially when they're having, 10 meetings a day, probably more than that in some cases, as I'm sure you'll hear, they need to know what matters out of what you're saying and what you want them to do about it. That is all. So if you can identify those 2 to 3 issues to discuss, whether it's, affordability to PFAS CERCLA, liability concerns, you really want to make sure you have those 2 to 3 issues to discuss. Next, you really want to compel them. So just like any good storyteller, you want to make them act. You want to make them do things. So you have 30 minutes or less to convey your ask, make it count. So I always start with some data. Data is always very helpful and very explanatory of what you're talking about, as well as personal stories. So for example, when I was working on LIWAP, I would always say, we have a lot of challenges in the United States where many people do not have access to water. I quoted that exact number. I explained a personal story or sent them a video that HHS had provided for LIWAP ahead of time. So again, that meeting starts before you get there. Then you want to talk about the financial burden to the utility and customers, because you really want to make them care. You want them to hear how this is affecting your ability to operate your utility or your ability to operate your organization. It is really important to share that financial burden. And if you have real numbers, that goes a really long way, because quantifying that is something that really helps them to make the case later and to advocate for it. Your goal at the end of this meeting is you want to turn that staffer into an advocate for your issue. So compelling them is something that's really going to help you do that. Then you want to go into that subject matter expertise. So don't talk in acronyms, but really go in, this is the issue. Many ratepayers cannot use rates. Utilities cannot use rates to offset other rates. So that creates a challenge in many states where they can't have their own affordability program. That's really getting into the technical. You don't want to start with the technical. You really want to start with the data, the personal stories, and the financial burden. Make a case, and then they'll be more interested to hear the technical pieces. And then finally, the ask. I have been in many, many meetings where people forget the ask, and that is so essential. If you don't make an ask, they don't know what you want. I'm sure you'll hear about this in a few minutes, but ultimately, if you are not making an ask, then you have wasted your time and their time. So you really want to make sure that you come in, you have this clear, compelling story to share with them, and then you want to make that ask. So the ask for LIWAP was make this program permanent. That's what we want. Then some talking points. So I always start with the problem. So paint a picture of the problem, explain, like I said, the data, the stories, the financial burden, the cost, all of these different things. Then you want to say the solution. This is the solution that we see will help solve this problem. And then finally, that ask. Your solution is not the same thing as your ask. Your solution is more of that subject matter expertise coming in of saying, this is the solution that we have identified. This is the ask that we're making of Congress. Because, for example, if you ask Congress to deal with workforce issues, there's not much that they can do in their toolbox really to to accomplish that. However, if you ask them about funding a program to support workforce issues in EPA, that's an actual ask that they are able to act on, and isn't something that just exists, in the ether. Next, like any good relationship, as I mentioned, you have to ask them what they need. They are people. They are very busy and they are there to serve. And frankly, when they have a ton of different priorities, it can be really difficult for them to, ignore their other priorities and shift to yours. So their members have priorities that they represent. If you can't help them achieve if you can help them achieve those priorities, they will want to help you even more. So for example, I know one of the challenges, that I had solved was that the member didn't feel like they had a direct relationship with the utilities in the area. So immediately what I did was I set up that meeting so they could have that one-on-one conversation. So if you can help them to get their priorities done and finished, they will be much more willing to help you. And like I said, always ask them what they need. Don't leave the meeting without asking them what they need. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat about all of this. And I will now kick it back to Chelsea to introduce the next portion of this. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And there will be a Q&A at the end. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, BB. And yeah, we'll put her email in the chat. I'm sure she's happy to chat with any of you guys, and really appreciate that overview, because I can't tell you how many times through different volunteer or professional roles I've been in a lot of meetings with Congress with different utility leaders who are very smart and very intelligent, but do make the simple mistakes that BB kind of addressed of not creating any personal connection or not having all their facts together and just reading bullet points that were given to them, or definitely doing the acronyms. One time I was in there and the senator, heard the pitch and then said, "What do you want me to do about that?" And they had no idea because they were just reading bullet points. So this is such a great opportunity of time, and following BB's tips helps you not waste it. So thanks so much, BB. And now we're going to bring up, BB will go off camera and we'll bring up Josh Mahan. Josh is the Senior Director of Government Industry Relations at Xylem, and super excited for him to introduce his panelists, and he'll tell you a little bit about himself as well. He was a former Capitol Hill staffer as well, and then we'll have the Q&A. So during this portion, you guys are free to chat back and forth in the chat, but also use the Q&A function to submit your questions, upvote, and then in a little bit, Nicole and I will come up and help answer some of your questions as well. So thanks so much, Josh.
Thanks, Chelsea. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. A little bit about myself. I've been with Xylem for about 4 years, and I've had the good fortune to work with Chelsea and BB for quite a few years now. Rogue Water is a key partner with the Reservoir Center for Water Solutions, which we are quite proud to be engaged with on. So thank you all for joining us. Really excited about today.